Lisa, ready? Commissioner Corn, you good?
I am ready.
All right. It is 1:33. Where's the feedback coming from?
Hello. Never thought I'd be able to do that in here.
Okay, that was a surprise. All right, it is still 1:33 on June 11th, 2025, where we're called to order this public hearing. First item on our agenda is file ZC 0001-25, zone change request from rural 10 to rural 5. And so with that, we'll turn it over to, well, actually, before we turn it over to staff, let's call for a conflict of interest.
Commissioner Corn has none.
Commissioner Domke has none.
Do we have any hearing?
Yes, thank you. Is there anybody that needs any assistance, hearing assistance, other assistance? Okay, thank you, sir. With that, staff, if you're prepared to present, please proceed.
Wait 1 second, sorry.
No rush at all. Even though we're all watching, it's okay. Happens to me all the time.
Hey, Bill.
Mr. Wilson.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Dave Fisher, Bonner County Planning. And here for zone change 1-25, rural 10 to rural 5 for Cropper. Project summary. The applicants are requesting a zone change from rural 10 to rural 5 on one parcel approximately 10 acres in size. Project is located off Helen Thompson Road, Section 5, Township 56 North, Range 3 West. Comprehensive plan designation is rural residential, 5 to 10 acres. And this request was evaluated against the standards for rural 10 and rural 5. Picture there shows the property with the creek running through the middle of it. Bonner County Revised Code sections that apply to this project, purpose, title amendments, comp plan amendments, zone changes, zoning districts, map designations, zoning districts and map designations established, rural district, and definitions. Background on this parcel, current use is residential, it's unplatted, approximately 10 acres, zoned rural 10. Land use designation, rural residential, 5-10 acres. And the parcel is accessed from Helen Thompson Road, Bonner County owned and maintained public right-of-way. Environmental factors, the site does contain map slopes of 0 to 30% plus. The site does contain map wetlands. The site does contain frontage on Trickle Creek, an intermittent stream. And the parcel is within Special Flood Hazard Zone X. The site has ponderay silt loam, 5 to 45% slopes. The soil type is consociation, well drained, and classifies as not prime farmland. Services include individual well for water, individual septic system for sewage, served by Westside Fire District, Northern Lights Incorporated, and Lake Ponderay School District number 84. Agencies providing comment included Bonner County Historical Society and Northern Lights. Agencies replying with no comment were the Department of Environmental Quality, Idaho Transportation Department, Idaho Fish and Game, Kootenai Ponderay Sewer District, Panhandle Health, and the Forest Service. No other agencies replied. No public comments were received. Or Rural 10, appropriate in areas designated as rural residential in the comp plan that meet one or more of the following criteria. Characterized by slopes that are steeper than 30%, located within critical wildlife habitat as identified by federal, state, or local agencies, contain prime agricultural soils, served by a network of public and/or private roads that generally do not meet applicable roadway standards set forth in Title II of this code or Appendix A of this title, or are absent, or within the floodway, or contain limited access to public services. For Rural 5, appropriate in areas designated rural residential in the comp plan that are already developed at or near the one dwelling unit per 5 acre density and/or do not meet the criteria for R10 above. The standards for review against these two codes, both are designated rural residential. We looked at the characterized by slopes, critical wildlife habitat, prime ag soils, served by network of public and private roads within the floodway, limited access to public services, and for the R5, whether or not it's developed at or near one dwelling unit per 5 acres, and whether or not it met the criteria for R10. For R10, characterized by slopes steeper than 30%. The parcel does contain slopes steeper than 30%. The parcel has mostly areas of 0 to 29.9%, excuse me, with steeper sloping around the intermittent stream, dividing the property from north to south. According to the land use portion of the comprehensive plan for density ranges, properties that are level to moderately sloped are appropriately sized to be 5 to 10 acres. As far as located within critical wildlife habitat, no critical wildlife area was determined by any agency. For containing prime agricultural soils, the parcel contains one type of soil, the ponderay silt loam, 5 to 45% slope. According to a natural resource component of the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan, ponderay silt loam is considered not prime farmland. Not prime farmland is defined as all other soil types not classified as prime farmland or farmland of statewide importance are classified as not prime farmland. For the natural resources component of the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan, the rural residential land use designation and the rural zoning district encourages agricultural pursuits. Agricultural pursuits are still viable with not prime farmland soils. The types of crops grown may be limited. There's a picture showing the entire parcel with the one soil type labeled as not prime farmland. And as far as being served by a network of public and private roads that generally do not meet applicable roadway standards, the access to the parcel is by a combination of Bonner County owned and maintained roads and State of Idaho owned and maintained roads. Helen Thompson Road via Rinco Loop via Highway 2. Both Bonner County Road and Bridge and Idaho Transportation Department did not provide comment on the zone change. For being within the floodway, the risk of flooding of the parcel is minimal as the parcel is not within a map floodplain or floodway per FEMA Firm Panel 16017C0925E. And for containing limited access to public services, the parcel has access to public services. Public services that are available for this property include fire protection from Westside Fire District, emergency services from Bonner County Sheriff and Bonner County EMS, and power from Northern Lights Incorporated. Other amenities are private well and individual septic system. To meet Rural 5 standards, developed at or near one dwelling unit per 5 acres. It appears most surrounding properties in the immediate area are developed at 10 plus acres. There are 7 parcels within 2,000 feet of this project. They're developed with one dwelling unit per 5 acres or are below 10 acres. And/or does not meet the criteria for R10. Property does not appear to be characterized by steep slopes of 30% or greater. It does not have any identified critical wildlife habitat. It is not within a map floodway. It does have access to public services. It is served by a network of private and public roads, and it does not contain soil classified as prime farmland. That picture shows the 7 parcels within 2,000 feet that are already developed at the 1 house per 5 acres or under 10 acres.
So to be clear, what you have labeled as parcel 1, so that's approximately 8.8 acres.
Yes.
So just shy of 9. Parcel 2 is 9 acres. Parcel 4 is 9.3 acres. Parcel 8 is the 5-acre parcel. Parcel 5 is 9.87 acres. Parcel 6 is 7.56. And parcel 7 is 5 acres. Okay.
And I use the 2,000 foot radius because that's what GIS allowed me to go up to. As you can see, slightly south of there and north of there, multiple other parcels that would have fallen into that. And the Zoning Commission recommended approval on April 17th, 2025, with a 3-0 vote. Any other questions?
I don't have any.
Not at this time. Thank you. The applicant or the applicant's representative would like to.
I'll be a cropper.
It's in the file under BOCC.
Okay.
Nope.
I pulled up the April one. Perfect. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you to Dave, Planning Department. Welcome, public. My name is Travis Howler. Here representing the croppers in their zone change request, Rule 10 to Rule 5. As staff pointed out, we don't meet any of the criteria for R10, and therefore, based on code, R5 is directly suitable. The site location, Helen Thompson Road, it's via Rinko Loop. There's kind of an aerial, the star is where the subject site is. Just to get you kind of oriented, we're on the south end of Rinko Loop because of the two entrances coming off Highway 2 there. And so the zoning, you can kind of see the general area. You can see that we're this Rural 10 zone in between R5 and the Ag Forest 10. So just to give you kind of a context there. If you look at the parcel just to the south or to the west, that's a large, I believe, 160 acres of forest agriculture land owned by the Priest Lake Timber Company. Based on what I know in my experience, I believe that this area was actually probably R10 because of that property and then extended back. As we'll see, we don't meet any of the R10 criteria and most of these properties don't, but just kind of give you kind of a context and a full overview picture of the zoning. Now, we all know that the comprehensive plan is the guiding document. Rural residential is what we are, and you can see that's exactly what we're doing. That's why we don't need a comp plan. So we already meet that criteria. We know R10, R5 fit within that. But let's understand exactly why we're here. I think that's key to this whole proposal. I'm going to have Joel Cropper come up. Or you want that?
Hello, my name is Joel Cropper, and I'm speaking on behalf of my wife Kylie and our young daughters Clementine and Lucy. We stand in front of you today asking to rule in favor of this zone change. At this point in our lives, the opportunity my parents have offered us may be our only chance to own a home in Sandpoint. We ask that you allow them to give us this gift. Kylie and I were both raised in Sandpoint. Her grandparents were born and raised Clark Fork in Sandpoint. We both started working in service industries as teenagers. Kylie dipped ice cream cones at Dubs, then worked every restaurant job from washing dishes to managing spuds into her 20s. In 7th grade, I started mowing lawns for the man that took over my parents' landscaping business. I worked for him every summer until after graduating from college. We have spent the majority of our lives here, and to be honest, we took it for granted for many of those years. After leaving Sandpoint and getting a taste of city life, we returned home. We realized how special Sandpoint is and wanted to build our own lives in this incredible place. Since returning to Sandpoint, we have accomplished several dreams. In 2014, I bought Bonner Taxi and served our community for 8 years. In 2018, Kylie pursued her dream and started Cropper & Co. Barbershop. In 2022, we sold the taxi business and I joined Kylie and our team at our family-owned barbershop. We are proud owners and operators of a downtown Sandpoint business that serves hundreds of people, awarding us Best Barbershop in Sandpoint for many years in a row. We're proud of our accomplishments. We've been successful in our business endeavors while creating a beautiful family. But there's one dream that we haven't been able to reach. We don't have a home to call our own. Being young adults and floundering at the beginning of small business ownership, we weren't able to secure financing back in the years of reasonable house prices. We spent a lot of time dotting I's and crossing T's in order to better position ourselves to buy a home. But no matter how hard we've tried, the prices have remained just beyond our reach. I'm sure if we continue to grind and sacrifice, one day we can make that dream come true. But since having our children, this dream has become much more than just owning a home. Our dream now is to spend more time with our family and appreciate the life that we've built. My parents have offered us a piece of their property so that we may do exactly that. They're offering us this land they worked so hard for so that we can afford to build a modest home and continue the life we've built in Sandpoint. Along with giving us the security of owning a home to raise our girls, we will be able to support my parents as they age. They'll be able to stay in their beautiful home for which they've sacrificed so much for many more years. We'll be able to show our girls the importance of hard work and perseverance, but also the importance of family, community, and supporting one another in the various seasons of life. My parents giving us this land will be the greatest gift I could have ever imagined. I ask that you vote in favor so that we may continue to build and support our family and serve our community in our hometown we love so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
As you can see, this is goes a little bit more than the standard rezones we sometimes see before us. And I think we can all somewhat relate in some aspects to owning our first home or even having that opportunity. So to go back to the comp plan, one of the main criteria that I see with this is making sure how do we meet the comp plan? Well, it's rural residential, but the comp plan explicitly states that we need to meet those the implementation components, and we all know there's the policy goals and objectives within those components, but it's the policies within those components that are key. And how do we meet all those? Well, property rights, adjoining nearby landowners and future generations have been considered in this proposal. Those are also seen in the letters of support that are in your packet that we've seen. Population component, the proposal supports and addresses the growth challenges and the housing needs in the county. Schools and facilities, school facilities and transportation and school districts were notified and received no objections. Economic development, the fact that just wanting to build a house, they already have a contractor lined up, that immediately brings in construction money right there. Agricultural pursuits also remain viable with this proposal. The land use, we already talked about the rural residential comp plan use, but the proposal is to maintain the residential use of similar as the area. And the land is suitable, as I'll further show, by meeting not only the R5 but criteria, but also just that it's capable of supporting that. And I think any of these planners in here could tell you we've seen a lot worse in the R5 zone. Natural resources aren't going to be affected. Hazardous areas, there's no known hazardous areas. Public services, facility and utilities, we have public services, they're outlined there. Transportation, the access is through an easement coming off of Helen Thompson Road and Rinko Loop accessed. And both of those are county owned and maintained. The recreation, still those uses remain viable. Special areas or sites, the Bonner County Historical Museum provided a letter stating that no special areas are identified in the State Historic Preservation Office of Idaho Cultural Resources Information System, or CRIS. The housing component, the proposal saves on infrastructure and transportation needs as we are talking about the end of the road here. So no further transportation or anything like that is going to be needed. This is one of the policies within the housing component. We're meeting that. Community development, as I'll further show in a few slides, this is similar. This proposal is similar in parcel size, land use, and other surrounding parcels in that community, as well as want to, again, emphasize those letters that were in support from the neighbors. The agricultural component, the agricultural farming pursuits are not in conflict with the proposal and not changing. So that's the comp plan, those are the policies, and the other one is the zoning. Obviously, we know we're R10, so if we look at the code, BCRC 12-323 outlines the rural district, the R10, R5, R10 or B1, lists them all here. I'm a visual person, I like to put them in a table, so those are all the criterias that we're looking at. And I like to do the same thing with the R5. It's a nice visual to see if we meet this. Plus, it also gives the decision makers a nice visual so you guys can make at least have the tools to make that decision. And again, we do the same thing. The two criteria there, one dwelling unit per 5 acres or does not meet the R10 criteria. So a few of those criteria I just want to hit on. Dave did a great job, planning staff, of outlining like the slopes and the soils. I'm going to hit on the transportation real quick. You can see right there, everything that is in green is county owned and maintained. And so you can see Helen Thompson Road coming off Rinko Loop there off of the highway. So that's the distance, not very far. And then the surrounding parcels. Dave did bring up that there's 7 parcels below 10 acres in the surrounding areas, and that's the 1 through 7. If you were to expand that, it would be about the same percentage, if not a little bit higher. So just shooting, we look about 1/3 of the parcels are below 10 acres, and about 2/3 of the parcels are 10 acres or above. Why is that important? because it's not a slam dunk in the other direction, just to show you. And on top of that, one of the reasons that is put into place is for grandfathered stuff, but also for other zone changes. Now, as far as I know, there was no zone changes in this area in the last 5 years. So most of these smaller than 10 acres have been grandfathered in. But if you also look at the letters in support, a lot of those came from the surrounding neighbors. Obviously, Priest River Timber Company didn't provide one, but again, I want to show, we're talking about the community. What does the community want, or not exactly what they want, but how does it meet their thoughts, right? Because we all have to be neighbors to each other, and we all want to be neighborly. Well, your seat is also dictated by code. Well, how do we meet code? So if we look at the site conditions and under the R10, R5, obviously we're not characterized by slopes over 30%. There's no critical wildlife, no prime ag soils on the site. Site conditions are, the roads do meet the standards. We are not within a floodplain, and we actually have services. We don't have limited services. One dwelling per 5 acres. Again, we're only about 33%. I don't think we meet this. I think that's a true statement. However, but code does call out that if you don't meet the R10 criteria, you meet R5, and that's there. So this proposal is in accord with the purpose of the Rule 5 zoning district based on the outlines I just did. There is also additional code requirements to note. I know there's always, Commissioner Williams always hits on, well, why do you want this, right? This is the first step. The owners know that they're gonna have to do some sort of land division after this, right? There's more steps. This is just the first one, and they do. We know that there's creek and wetlands on site, so we're gonna have to make sure we're appropriately away from them based on the buffer. We know that this will be the third residence off of that road. We know we're gonna have to name the road. So we've already got the future mindset also in place. So the final review, I noticed in staff report, there is a checklist. And these are the checklist items. The state statute 67-6511, not in conflict with the policies of the comprehensive plan. The evidence there, I've laid out 4. We talked about not in conflict with the comp plan. The letters from the outside agencies that showed there was no conflict, those are the subject matter experts. That's why we send out those letters. Nobody had conflicts. Staff report calls out the proposal does not appear to be in conflict with the policies, another piece of evidence. The application that was submitted calls out each component where we answered that we sufficiently meet these and are not in conflict. And then also the current comprehensive plan land use designation is rural residential, where the appropriate designation is R10 or R5. So everything's met there. BCRC 12-215 talks about, does the application and the documentation provided by the applicant sufficiently meet the applicant content criteria? Again, evidence stated out there. The staff report shows that the application was complete and reviewed for compliance within Title 12. Evidence 2, all the criteria has been sufficiently addressed in the application and or during the slideshow, just trying to sum it all up. And the other evidence is that no required applicant content criteria remains unanswered. Everything was answered. So we meet that. BCRC 12-216, adequate evidence that the proposal is not in conflict with the policies of the comp plan as found in the adopted implementation component. I've laid out the evidence there. I won't go further into that. I thought I explained that with the PowerPoint. That's the big one. If needed, I can go back. Then the last 2 criteria, the BCRC 12-323, B1, B2. As we know, that's the R10, R5 criteria. And as those arrows are pointing to, those are the criteria, and those are how they are or are not met. So in conclusion, I think it's pretty safe to say R5 is the best zoning district. We meet it with code. Not only do we meet it with code, the comp plan supports it. And I think another main aspect, as Joel pointed out, we're talking about a hardworking, new, young family. I think supporting this, there's no better reason for this zone change. So, thank you.
The applicants have anything else that they'd like to present? So then we'll move into public comment. Do we have anybody in favor of the application who would like to offer comment? Okay. Do we have any parties that are neutral to the application that would like to offer public comment? And do we have any parties who are against the application who would like to offer public comment?
We do, Mr. Bowman.
Okay, Mr. Bowman?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
All right, Dave Bowman for the record. So there's a few things here. If we go to the code, 12.323 says use of the zone as appropriate areas designated by the comp follows R10 areas as rural residential in the comp plan, characterized by slopes steeper than 30%. Staff, the applicant, the zoning commission all said that it's not characterized by steeper than 30%. The code doesn't define characterized, but the code does say if its term's not in there, then you go to Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary, 11th edition, which defines characterized as to describe a character or quality of, or to be a characteristic of. And if you want to look at quality, it means a peculiar and essential character or an inherent feature. So going by that, and there are significant 30% plus slopes on this parcel, they are characterized. We also go, let's see, hang on a second. I'm scrolling. R5 in areas designated rural residential in the comp plan that are already developed at or near one dwelling unit per 5 acre density and or don't meet the criteria for R10. Well, this does meet the criteria for R10. But staff had a funny way to put it. They said, appears most surrounding properties in the immediate area are developed at 10 plus acres. That's true. 7 parcels within 2,000 feet developed 1 dwelling per 5 acres or are below 10 acres. But the code doesn't say anything about below 10 acres. It says at or near 5 acres. I see 1 parcel there that's 5 acres and the rest of them are 9 or above, from what I see on the GIS map. Also, Mr. Holler pointed out, he put a great graphic up there of the zoning map with this parcel looking at 5 acres. And I've never seen a better example of spot zoning. And if you look at how that is, there's a transition there from our, let's see, I'm not looking at the map right now, but it goes R5 and then R10 and then AF10. And the R10, where this parcel is, serves as a buffer between the R5 and the AF10. It's exactly how planning intended it and how zoning is supposed to work, that you have these buffer zones in between zones that would conflict with each other, right? So you typically don't want to put R5 up against AF10. So you have R10 in between as the buffer. Let's see if there's anything else that I have here. I think that's it. And you know, with all due respect to the applicants, I understand where they're coming from. But land use decisions are not to be made based on personal situations. They're going to be based on the law. And I wanted to say one other thing. Mr. Holler indicated that there's a need for housing. Planning just completed a study for the comprehensive plan saying that I might have this not precisely right, but there's enough parcels in existence in Bonner County at this time to fill a perceived need if I got it right for the next 20 years, something like that. So there is no need for new parcels to be made. I think that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other opposed public comment?
Yes, Reg Crawford.
Reg?
Reg Crawford, Bonner County. I just want to say that I agree with Dave Bowman's comment, and I do have the GIS map looking at the parcels, and I see one parcel that's smaller out there. I've always been against using comparative parcels because in some ways it just spreads the spot zoning throughout the entire county. You can always find a parcel somewhere that is not the same size as a neighborhood. How it got there, regardless, may or not have been correct way, but I just oppose the spot zoning in general. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Way else on.
Okay. Any questions or discussion you'd like to have before we give the applicant a rebuttal period?
I don't think so.
Would the applicant like to offer a rebuttal?
Sure.
Yeah.
Travis Haller. So just to hit on some of the points, I think Dave's correct, characterized, talking about the slopes. We've had this discussion many times before. He's also correct that we go to the 11th edition of the Merino Dictionary. But if you caught what he said in there, he called out the definition of characterize, and then he also said significant. Well, significant also has a definition, and that is can be looked up, but also characterize can also be defined in your guys' head as well. With the way I heard the comment being made, it sounded like anything with 30% slopes, whether it's 1% or 99% would be characterized. And I think those two are completely different. And I think with the topography of our county and the uniqueness of our county, I think that has to be well looked at. And I think we're all well aware of what characterized, significant, and the reason for why that piece of code is in there. 30% slopes offer numerous challenges, and I can have the applicants, owners come up and speak to the challenges or the lack thereof that are being created by these slopes. Mr. Bowman also talked about the below the 10 acres, and he says, that we don't meet that, and I agree. I don't think we meet that part of the code. I don't think there's a significant amount of one dwelling units on 5 acres. We don't meet that criteria. But I do want to point out that the reason why I believe staff, the reason why we categorize those 7 versus just one that is 5 acres or below is because an R10 is inherently a 10-acre minimum. So we're not calling out specifically that part of the code. What we are calling out is that these are the out of compliance parcels or lots within that 2,000 square foot, which leads to not meeting the R10, which leads to, well, what zone would it meet? And so because, as we all know, there's criteria set in place if you want to go build a house, if you want another dwelling on your property, if you want an ADU based on your lot size, and it's all dictated by the zoning code. I got obviously it's a rhetorical question. I don't need Dave to answer this, but show me affordable housing in the community. Show me a decent house in this community that you can afford on a decent salary. the median income of Bonner County, what, 55, 61? I think that's, show me how you can afford a $475,000 house. Show me how you can afford that. Spot zoning, I won't even go there. Bill Wilson has done a great job. The planning director has done a great job of outlining what is and what isn't spot zoning. It's also in state code. The fact that this comp plan is rural residential, that doesn't mean. And lastly, I'll just put, Dave Bowman talked about a buffer zone. It's nice in planning world, but again, we're a unique county. I can show you numerous places in the county where I have suburban directly adjacent to Ag Forest 10, Ag Forest 20. And so there's no buffer zone. That's just, he's just pulling that one out. So anyways, again, this land is capable, is suitable. The request for this proposal fits in line with why we have these zone changes. And so I hope you see favorable. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Questions, Commissioner?
Thank you.
All right. With that, we'll move into discussion amongst the board. Commissioner Corn?
So it's my belief that the zoning commission got it right. It's my belief that, looking at this, that it does not fit the rural 10 standards. We can always find ways to make it fit or not fit, depending on our own personal beliefs or whatever. And other land use issues that we've had to decide on, with the slopes, that's always been a problem because of the wording, and that's probably why the planning, why we're deleting it out of our code, along with the soils, because it's really hard to make a clear-cut judgment, black and white, on soils and slopes. It does meet the criteria to me as far as the rural 5 standards, having the infrastructure, the road systems and all that there. I personally don't see any reason to deny this. I do think that the zoning commission did a good job reviewing it. It was a 3-0 vote, I believe. Go ahead and change this. So those are my thoughts for right now, is that it does seem to align, according to our code, to the R5 and not the R10.
Okay. Director?
Yeah, Jacob Bell, Planning Director. So you'll notice something new in this staff report. It's included as an appendix, right? Thank you. Appendix D. And that is a land use decision-making worksheet, or the reason statement worksheet. This is included for the board to craft your findings of fact. So you'll see these going forward. This is the first file. You'll see the next one. You'll see it in other files moving forward. So it's this is to help your deliberation so that you make a defensible decision. And what we need from this is, on every standard and criteria that applies to each project, is you to make a discussion about that and a finding of the board. So I think we've talked about this a couple times in the past. You're seeing it finally for the first time in action. So it's to help guide that process. If you need Bill or I to help you walk through it, we're more than happy to jump in. And
What page is that on?
should be in Appendix D to the staff report, so probably near the end after the staff report. It's included as an attachment after agency comments and noticing and whatnot.
Should be the very last.
Thank you.
You don't have a copy, Commissioner Corn, I can get you one.
I see a bunch of emails.
It's after the comment, so if you go to the very end.
Thank you.
Something like that, yep.
Should be at the very end, Commissioner.
So you'll see as the standard that applies, and then a blank spot for you guys to come up with a deliberation, come to an agreement on that standard specifically, and then from your deliberation, staff will include this as an appendix to the decision letter that gets crafted after the decision is made. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, this is Bill Wilson for the record, and I represent the board on planning matters. I work in the commissioner or the prosecutor's office. So the goal with this worksheet is to, like as Jake alluded to, really help us get to the point where we're crafting well-reasoned, defensible decisions that reflect the deliberation and the evidence in the record. And so you'll also note that we have tweaked proposed motions either for approval or denial. And those also incorporate the staff report where you choose to agree with it. So we anticipate that there will be some criteria upon which there's not much public debate or maybe debate amongst the board. And in that case, you could, it would be within your discretion to say, when we're working through the worksheet, to say, I think that the staff report analysis on this topic is sufficient for me and I'd like to adopt it by reference. You could do that. You can also, on contested matters, right? For example, the issue of what we mean by the term, what's the one that just escaped me? Yeah, characterized by. That's a contested issue, so we do need to bring that up. We need to address it. That would be a place where you can go beyond the staff report, use your own analysis, use your own evidence in the record. But just encouraging you guys on the issues that aren't really subject to debate. If you agree with the staff report, it could be as easy as simply saying, I do agree with that and I want to incorporate that into this reasoned statement. That's fine. And then we should just work through each one of these and take as long as we need to. We don't need to rush that. And so if we need to pull up code sections for you guys to review, so you can look at to the extent that the writing in that worksheet doesn't tell you exactly what you need to do, we can look at the code and do that. But the goal is to not let you guys move on. We kind of have you hostage, and we want to make sure that you guys are tackling each issue because, well, frankly, we've learned the hard way that we need to do a better job of that, and this is our first effort to make that happen. So that's just to help you guys understand the process that we've been working on to come up with this. And I think staff and myself, we want to be available to communicate with you guys through this deliberative process. So like I said, if you want to pull up the code sections, I think we can probably try to do that and just make sure that the product we produce now is reflected in the motion. And then we are able to incorporate large portions of the staff report to the extent that they're not objectionable, and this reasoned statement in the written decision that we provide to the applicant and to any aggrieved parties. That's the goal. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to add to my comments earlier that I do agree with all of the staff reports.
Okay. And before the worksheet is, I think, it's brief but thorough in hitting the pertinent points, so I think that probably makes the most sense to walk through at this point instead of me just arbitrarily commenting on different aspects to staff and council's recommendations. So the first item on the worksheet is in reference to Idaho Code 67-6511, so LUPA, and we're essentially being asked to consider whether or not our analysis is in accordance with the adopted comprehensive plan. And so from the perspective of the fact that the comprehensive plan map designation has this listed as rural residential, that accommodates both a rural 5 and a rural 10 zoning. So looking at that, as well as all the other provisions that staff have listed with regard to the comprehensive plan considerations, I also agree with staff's report and analysis with regard to compliance with the comprehensive plan. So I agree that yes, based on our analysis, that this is in conformance with Idaho Code 67-6511. Next, we have Bonner County Revised Code 12-215. Whether the application and documentation provided by the applicant sufficiently meets the application, it says applicant, but I think it meant to say application contents criteria. Well, you know, I guess it is applicant contents criteria, depending how you want to word it. And so I want to pull up that code, please.
That was the 215.
Yes, sir.
Wait, if you guys would like to see these criteria in the worksheet for future reference, so we don't have to do this, we can also, this is a living document, right? So we can accept your feedback on that as well.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah, it's a good point, and maybe if it was an appendix to it, so that otherwise we might have a lot of run-on pages to get to the, depending on the length of the reference, but that's a good point, Bill. So then this is specific to the contents of the application itself. And I have reviewed the application, and I will, ultimately, I'm going to rely on the fact that staff considered it a complete application and processed it as such. But I have also personally reviewed the application, and it appeared to be a complete application from my review. So I am comfortable with indicating that the evidence from the record supports the conclusion that the applicant's application contents have been met.
I agree.
Third item is Bonner County Revised Code 12-216. Question being whether or not the proposal is not in conflict with the policies of the comprehensive plan as found in the adopted implementation component. And I realize now, because we're being systematic, we're looking at our county code, but because we also found that we were in compliance with our comprehensive plan when looking at LUPA, then to say that we're not in compliance now means that we'd have to go back and reconsider the first question. I still believe that we're in compliance with the comprehensive plan, in particular, the implementation component. And so I agree that that is in compliance.
Do you adopt the staff report analysis on that topic as well?
Yes, thank you. I agree with and adopt the staff report analysis. With regard to the,
Do you mind if I just hop
No,
up
go
here?
right ahead.
Okay, all right, great.
Our first new,
Yeah, 100%. I'll just be a fly on the wall unless I'm needed.
so we're on to the fourth criteria. Bonner County Revised Code 12-323B1, whether the parcel in question meets the requirements for the Rural 10 zoning district. I know Commissioner Corn, you and I have some differing opinions on how to interpret this part of the code when it comes to slopes, and it's not an easy thing, I will admit, and it is frustrating to me that we don't have better defined criteria. When I look at the terminology and how to try to define that, Characterized for me is whether or not it's distinguished or has a distinguishing feature. I think that the intermittent creek and the low-lying land that's created by it, that essentially has created by the creek, the steep slopes down to the creek that are shown on the LiDAR. It is a small percentage. For my estimation, it's probably around 20% of the area of the 10-acre parcel is actually slopes greater than 30%. And so in my mind, it's a distinguishing feature because when I go out and I evaluate or describe a parcel of land, you would bullet list out what are the primary or distinguishing features of that. You would talk about, do you have steep areas? Do you have level areas to develop and build on? Do you have timber? Do you have pasture? So when you think about it from a real estate perspective, which is ultimately what's being done, if I were to describe in a real estate type analysis what this land's distinguishing features are, the fact that it has a steep ravine to a creek is definitely something that I would list. So for me, I do believe that I need to check the box when it comes to the steep slopes. And so for me, I'm not comfortable indicating that, excuse me, I have to go back to the list. I'm not comfortable indicating that it, the question here is whether the parcel in question meets the requirements for Rural 10. To meet Rural 10, you have to be able to check one of the criteria. In analyzing the staff report and the criteria, I agree with the staff report with the exception of whether or not I believe the property is characterized by steep slopes. So I differ from the staff report in this one instance. So for me, I believe the property by definition does meet the Rural 10 criteria. And then when I work into the final one being BCRC 12-323B2, the Rural 5 criteria, the prerequisite when we look at the language of meeting Rural 5, right, it starts with R5 in areas designated rural residential in the comprehensive plan that are already developed at or near the one dwelling unit per 5 acres density. So I was doing the math and we were looking at the map, and of all the parcels that staff highlighted within the 2,000-foot radius of the subject parcel, we have, and I rounded the parcels doing simple rounding to the nearest acre. So if something's 9.8, I did it as 10. If it's 10.2, I did it as 10. We have 23 parcels, which equate to essentially 916 acres. The largest parcel being 400 acres and the smallest parcel being 5 acres. That puts the average parcel size for the 23 parcels at 39.8 acres. And then of those 23 parcels, 17 of the parcels would then fall into the 10-acre or greater designation if we did the simple rounding. So when I look at it and I see of 23 parcels, only 2 existing parcels are at 5 acres. And of the ones that are between 5 and 10 acres, those are all much closer to 10 acres in size. So when I look at the character of parcel sizes and the zoning designation of R10 throughout that area, to me, to change this particular parcel to R5 would be completely out of character with the rest of the zoning. And we would be then inviting inconsistency to begin to be created throughout that area within the zoning map. And so I don't believe that this parcel meets the prerequisite of county code to say that the area is already developed at or near one dwelling unit per 5 acres. Just because we have so many large parcels, particularly even just looking at 20 acres and larger, there are so many of them surrounding that property.
So can I ask you to read
Yeah.
the code? When it's talking about developed at or near the one dwelling unit per 5 acres. Is it written in the code where it says and, or is it written in there as
Or near, so it's right here, number
Alex,
2.
can you pull it up?
R5 in areas designated rural residential in the comprehensive plan that are already developed at or near the one dwelling unit per 5 acre density. And then you have the and/or meet the criteria for R10 above. But when it comes to just the consideration of the current development density, so when it says at or near, to me, the near means we have to look at rounding, right? So if our consideration is between 5 and 10, then from a simple rounding perspective, anything that's below 7.5, right, the midpoint between 5 and 10, I would call near a 5 acre development. But all of the less than 10 acre parcels are greater than 7.5 acres. So they're either 5 acres or they're greater than 7.5 acres.
So I'm just trying to figure, because I don't know if there's any one parcel in our whole county that fits 100% into any one zoning requirements, right? So then it's our job to sit here and say, well, which one does it most likely fit? Which one can we check off more of the boxes? I think we've had that.
Right, and in some instances, I agree, it's a which one meets more criteria.
Right.
The struggle I have is, and I truly appreciate the circumstance of the housing market, the price. My own family, like a lot of families have similar struggles, and I truly appreciate that. Unfortunately, I don't believe I have the authority or the right to make a decision based on that reality. I have to look at the requirements of the law. And because of the way this is written for R5, this is a prerequisite, right? It has to already be developed at this level. Otherwise, I don't see how we can approve it, the way the language is written.
So obviously our opinions differ.
Yeah, so given,
because-
yeah,
Because the whole slope thing really doesn't even come into play in my mind until characterized to me and to past boards, not that that matters, but is like 49, 50% or more of the property. With the building background that I have, I could understand why that was put into our code at some point in time, because it does make it harder for leach fields and everything else. You need more land, because if you have so much property in that parcel with those slopes, it makes it very difficult for septic systems mainly. But with this being estimated at about 20%, and it's not high points, it's low points. The slopes of greater than 30% is kind of misleading, and it took me a little bit of time to understand that, because I understand slopes as going up, but it's also going down. And so looking at this, there's plenty of areas on this parcel to put in a septic system, and that's not even what we're being asked for today, because that would come under the BOP at that point in time if they chose to build. So that's why I discount the fact, or not the fact, but our code where it says characterize. I don't characterize that as having enough 30% slope to make a difference. That's why
understand that
I
perspective.
check the box that it does
Gotcha.
not meet that.
And if it was a small percentage that was isolated to one corner or edge of a property, I would have the same opinion. But when something runs through essentially the middle of the property, and bifurcates it and limits capabilities and so forth, to me, that's a reason why that was included, for just a different interpretation of the same development limitations. And I'm just catching, though, going back to the R5 criteria, I misspoke. So the at or near the one dwelling unit per 5 acres, it's not, and it's and/or do not meet the criteria for R10 above. So the or would mean, is my understanding, would mean then that we can interpret it to say that if if we agreed it didn't meet the R10, then that would be, it could qualify for R5 simply because of not meeting the R10.
That was my understanding.
So I misspoke earlier when I talked about the development density. So I don't think it meets the R5 existing development density. I disagree with staff on that. But it gives us the opportunity if we were to determine it does not meet R10. I believe that the slopes are a characteristic of the property, the steep slopes. So to me, it does meet the R10 criteria. But if I thought that it didn't meet that, then I think it would qualify with the way the code is written. So I just want to clarify that I misstated that earlier, and I want to get it
That's what I
corrected.
asked.
I want to get it corrected, so I misspoke.
Okay, commissioners, well, if you want me to jump in for just a moment, it looks like there's a disagreement on the board on how to interpret that term. And then that kind of means that you guys disagree on whether or not this file should be approved. Let's see. So this is a rezone request, which means that it is only a recommendation from the zoning commission. The reason that's important is because the nature of the matter coming before you can make the difference as to what happens in a tie. Okay. So for example, we have conditional use permits that are either approved or denied at the zoning commission level. And then in that case, if there is a tie, then the underlying decision stands because you guys were unable to make an affirmative decision. In this case, because it's only a recommendation, there has been no approval offered. And so if the board is unable to affirmatively approve this file, then the default is that it's denied. So that would be, I think that's how we handle that. Jake, you looking at me the wrong way?
Does the applicant also have, or does the board have the option, which the applicant may favor,
Yeah.
to continue the hearing in the
Yes,
hopes that we would have a
certainly can.
3-member board, so we could have
At
an
least you have an
affirmative
up or
decision
down
one way
answer.
or the other?
Yeah, you do.
I don't like the applicant being in a position where they have a split vote. So if we have an option to
That's always our
continue the
preference.
meeting so that the applicant has a clear decision made by the board, I think
Even
that
if
would
it
be.
ends up in a denial, if the third commissioner, depending on, it doesn't matter how Commissioner Williams just chooses to decide this issue, at least then you have a solid appealable record and you guys can decide if that's something you want to challenge. Jake, do you have take any issue with you stepped out of the room just while I was explaining a moment, trying to just.
Timing's
It's,
So I think
I'd say,
a tie vote is a failure of that vote to move forward, but there's still no underlying decision that would.
right, but there's only the underlying is only a recommendation, it's not an approval. So any applicant who comes in has to secure, they're looking for an affirmative approval in order to accomplish something. So the default is what exists already.
And then-
I think when it's only a recommendation, then, that doesn't operate as a previous approval. It has to, the default then is a no, because nobody has been able to say yes.
And to your point, then, my understanding is it would be in the applicant's best interest to have a clear decision.
Yeah.
So that if they want to appeal or challenge the decision, that they have a path forward from there. Otherwise,
I do think so.
What position would the applicant be left in if we
Well, I
have a
mean, we
non-affirmative
do have
decision?
we document the fact that a majority, the board was unable to secure a majority vote. And that is the appealable decision. I mean, we make the best out of it that we can. But practically speaking, both for the applicants and for everybody involved, it's better to have an up or down vote, yes or no, because then at least you know what your options are a little better, I think. So and we are actually in the process of looking at potential changes for how to address this situation. But for the meantime, I would recommend that if the board is at an impasse and you guys can't, one side or the other cannot convince the other, I would recommend that we continue. And that I think Commissioner Williams is dealing with some personal issue, medical issue, something of that effect, and she's not gone forever. So she will be able to return, and we will have an odd number of commissioners able to render a majority vote one way or the other. That's my recommendation.
And I'm more than comfortable asking the applicant, if you agree, Commissioner what their preference is, because I think it's in their best interest to continue the meeting and have a 3-member board. So comfortable with us asking for what they would prefer?
Sure. Don't know if it'll change the outcome, but yes.
Would the applicants prefer that we continue the hearing so that you have a 3-member board to make a decision? I think that's in your best interest. All right. We need a time certain, though, do we not?
I defer that to the planning staff.
So due to the board's schedule, we don't have another hearing in June or the first half of July. I believe the next hearing we have is July 23rd, which I believe has 4 agenda items on it already, maybe 5.
We're racking them up.
Yep.
There are a couple special ones, but I don't know if we have.
There's one on July 15th.
July 15th.
Oh, yeah.
There's an appeal hearing. I don't know what file that is. I don't have a note of it. There's an appeal hearing on the 15th, starting at 2 o'clock. We could put this.
Could we maybe extend the time frame on the calendar for that
I have a
hearing?
planning commission meeting at 4:30 that day, so the board can continue on, and we have 2 different rooms, right?
Yeah.
So we could do that.
Yeah, so that we don't have this get pushed too far out. If we could fit it in by extending the duration of that hearing.
Yeah.
Commissioner Thorne, do you know if that would be okay with your schedule?
You know,
I'm sure it will be.
July 15th.
I just want to make sure it's not.
Or
There are no details in the
I'd say July
meeting
15th
appointment
at
itself.
2 o'clock, so.
Okay. Okay. Would you like me to step down and make the motion?
Sure.
All right, I'll step down from the chair and move to continue the public hearing of file ZC0001-25 to July 15th, 2025 at 2 p.m.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All right, roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes, motion passes. So the hearing will be continued. Sorry we couldn't have a clear determination for you today. Alex, you need a few minutes to set up? Sure. You need a 2-minute break, Commissioner? or-
I'm fine.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners. Alex Fan, Assistant Director, for the record. So today, this is a reconsideration file ZC 0011-24, a zone change request from AF20 to AF10. These are the standards that this application was reviewed against.
I'm sorry, Alex. I think first I need to open the hearing for this particular file.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, you jumped it down.
Should we also ask if the applicant would like to, I hate to say it, but postpone till there's a full board here?
So we don't have the luxury of that one this time around, because this is a reconsideration. The board has to render a written decision within 60 days. And to that point, anticipating potential. So we do have, in this case, because it is a reconsideration, we have an underlying decision that the board already reached. So I did discuss that with Jacob earlier today. If the board was unable to have a majority decision today, then the underlying decision that was already reached, that becomes the final decision. No, we hope that, hopefully we can get to that majority. That's the reason we offered the reconsideration. But, having only 2 commissioners here does make that somewhat awkward. So we're just doing the best we can with it.
Okay.
Okay, then we're continuing our public hearing, and we are on to reconsideration of file ZC0011-24, zone change from agricultural forest 20 to agricultural forestry 10. We'll do a check for any conflicts of interest.
Commissioner Corn has none?
Commissioner Domke has none. Again, let me just ask if we have anybody in the audience who needs any special assistance, such as hearing assistance. Seeing none, we'll move on to staff presentation.
Thank you, Commissioners. Alex Van, Planning Staff. So this application is a application for a zone change from agricultural forestry to agricultural forestry, agricultural forestry 20 to agricultural forestry 10 on one parcel that's approximately 20 acres. Project is located off Thimbleberry Lane in Section 26, Township 58 North, Range 1 West, Boyce and Meridian. This parcel has a comprehensive plan designation of ag forest land, and this request was evaluated against the standards for Ag Forest 20 and Ag Forest 10. This is where we get to the reconsideration language. So the board may consider the reconsideration motion as scheduled on an open business meeting agenda and determine whether to grant or deny the request. If the board grants reconsideration in whole or in part, a hearing before the board will be scheduled to address the specific deficiencies identified by the applicant or affected person and to allow interested persons to have an opportunity to be heard. If the board denies the request for reconsideration, it shall promptly notify the parties in writing. So the notice of the public hearing is to identify the specific deficiencies alleged in the reconsideration request will be provided as follows. At least a 15-day notice to agencies and political subdivisions, 15 days prior to the hearing. And the director shall send notice to all political subdivisions providing services with the planning jurisdiction, including the school districts and the manager or person in charge of the local airport. At least 15-day notice prior to the public hearing for publishing the notice in the official newspaper or paper of general circulation in the county. And a radius notification will be provided in the same manner as originally provided on the application. Following the hearing on the reconsideration, the board may affirm, reverse, or modify its prior decision and shall provide a written decision to the applicant and the affected persons within 60 days of receipt of the request for reconsideration. If the board fails to timely decide, the original decision of the board will stand. At the April 9th, 2025 public hearing, the Board of County Commissioners denied this request for a zone change. The board's written decision was rendered on April 14th, 2025, and the applicant's representative provided a letter for a request for reconsideration of the board's decision and the required fees on April 20th, 2025. The letter states that the board's decision was arbitrary and capricious and or abuse of discretion. The board granted the request for reconsideration on May 6th, 2025, and all of the requirements for the section have been met. The board shall render a written decision no later than June 27th of 2025. This is an unplatted parcel, approximately 20 acres. It is zoned agricultural forestry 20 and has a land use designation of ag forest land. The parcel is accessed from Thimbleberry Lane, a privately owned and maintained road, via Colburn Culver Road, a Bonner County owned and maintained public right of way. So the graphic on the right shows the outlined site in purple. The green on the western side is Colburn Culver Road, indicating that it's a publicly owned and publicly maintained road, not a privately maintained. I apologize for that. And Thimbleberry Lane, a privately owned and maintained road. So So the site does contain mapped slopes of 0 to 30% grade. The site does not contain mapped wetlands. It does not contain frontage on a mapped water body. And it is located within Special Flood Hazard Area Zone X. It's served by an individual well and individual septic, Northside Fire District, Vista Utilities, and Lake Pend Oreille School District number 84. So the graphic on the right-hand side shows slopes from 0 to 30%. Anything that is clear is within 0 to 15%. Yellow is 15 to 30, and red is 30 or greater. And after my presentation, if you would prefer, I have a greater breakdown of slopes that GIS has provided, so I can provide that as well. So there are 4 different types of soil on this property. There are 2 soils that are considered not prime farmland, 1 soil that is considered all area of prime farmland, and 1 that is considered farmland of statewide importance. So we received comments from the Bonner County Historical Society and Northern Lights Incorporated. We received no comments, replies from Idaho Transportation Department, Northside Fire District, Idaho Department of Fish and Game, Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, and we did not receive any other agency comments. We did receive 1 public comment, and that is included in your report, or it should be included in your packet today. For Agricultural Forestry 20, so the Agricultural Forestry District is established to provide for agricultural and forestry pursuits, including livestock production, forestry, horticulture, floriculture, viticulture, and necessary accessory uses for treating, storing, and processing agricultural products. Purpose of the AF District is to preserve, protect, and maintain areas that are rural in character and the integrity of the forest and woodland areas where viable agricultural pursuits can be feasible, and to avoid fragmentation of forests and farms. These purposes are accomplished by establishing residential density limits and conservation development standards to retain areas sized for efficient farming, allowing for uses related to agricultural production and limiting non-agricultural uses to those compatible with agriculture or requiring close proximity for the support of agriculture. The use of this zone is appropriate in areas designated by the comprehensive plan as follows. AF20 in all areas designated as prime ag forest land in the comprehensive plan. The AF20 zone is also appropriate in areas designated as ag forest land in the comprehensive plan that also feature prime agricultural soils, are characterized by agricultural or forestry uses, and in areas where 1 or more of the following apply. Limited services characterized by slopes steeper than 30%, where access may be absent or limited to substandard road systems, or where large tracts of land may be devoted to ag forest protection. For AF10, AF10 in areas designated as ag forest land in the comprehensive plan that do not feature prime agricultural soils, but where agricultural and forestry pursuits remain viable. These areas may be within or adjacent to areas of city impact, or where lands are afforded fire protection, access to standard roads, and other services. And this is just a quick overview of the 2 zoning districts. We'll get into the standards for agricultural forestry 20. So the first criteria is contains prime agricultural soils. So the parcel contains 4 types of soil. According to the natural resources component of the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan, there are 2 soils, the dark green on the western portion and the blue portion on the northern and eastern portion of the property are considered not prime farmland. These soils make up approximately 5 acres of the project site. Not prime farmland is considered all other soil types classified as prime farmland or farmland of statewide importance are classified as not prime farmland. So for the other 2, there is this one highlighted in gold, Selly silt loam and Mission silt loam, the light green to the southwest of the parcel. These are considered areas of prime farmland and farmland of statewide importance, respectively. The Selly Silt loam is classified as a 4E if it is not irrigated. 4E, the 4E classification is described as soils that have severe limitations that restrict the choice of plants, require very careful management, or both. And subclass E is made up of soils for which the susceptibility to erosion is the dominant problem or hazard affecting their use. Erosion susceptibility and past erosion damage are the major soil factors that affect soils in this subclass. But it should be noted that farmland of statewide importance has not been recognized as prime farmland soil by the comprehensive plan or by the state of Idaho. Characterized by agricultural and forestry uses. So according to the Bonner County Assessor data, the parcel is currently receiving an agricultural timber exemption on approximately 19 acres of the property, and the surrounding areas appear to have similar tax exemptions. Characterized by slopes steeper than 30%. The parcel does contain slopes steeper than 30%, as shown in the red on the right-hand side of the screen. The parcel has mostly areas of 0 to 29.9% grade, approximately 18 acres of the parcel, and contains 2 acres of areas with slopes that are approximately 30% or greater. So according to the land use portion of the comprehensive plan for density ranges, the properties that are level to moderately sloped are appropriately sized to be 5 to 10 acres. If access may be absent or limited to substandard road systems, so access to the parcel is by way of Thimbleberry Lane, a privately owned and maintained road, and Colburn Culver, a Bonner County owned and maintained public right-of-way. Bonner County Road and Bridge did not comment as to the construction of Colburn Culver Road, and there's been no information provided to the construction and quality of Thimbleberry Road. Next, large tracts of land may be devoted to ag forest production. So within 1,200 feet of this property, there are 19 properties. 11 of these properties, including the project site, are sized at 20 acres or larger, ranging from 20 to 80 acres. These larger parcels all appear to have the capability to be devoted to ag forest production or are currently being used for ag forest production. Next is for agricultural forestry 10, so the comprehensive plan designation. So the property has a comprehensive plan designation of ag forest land, which is devoted to properties of 10 to 20 acres in size. As of the date of the staff report, the Planning Commission has proposed changes to the comprehensive plan countywide, and the proposed land use designation for this parcel is to remain as ag forest land, which would continue to be compatible with 10 to 20 acre parcels. Do not feature prime agricultural soils, but where agricultural and forestry pursuits remain viable. As stated above, the property contains soils that are considered to be not prime farmland, and one soil that is considered farmland of statewide importance, and one soil that is considered to be prime farmland. So the property or the soils that are considered non-prime farmland and farmland of statewide importance is approximately 10 acres of the property, and the other area, the other 10 acres of the property contain a soil that is considered to be prime farmland. The property is currently receiving an agricultural and forest tax exemption on 19 acres of the 20 acre parcel. Next, of whether it's within or adjacent to area of city impact. So this property is not located within an area of city impact, but is located approximately 2.4 miles as the crow flies from the city of Kootenai's area of city impact. Afforded fire protection services. This property is located within the service area of the Northside Fire District. Additionally, this parcel is afforded other services, including Bonner County EMS, Bonner County Sheriff, Vista Utilities provides power, and an individual well and individual septic system. Access to standard roads and other services. So access to the parcel is by way of Thimbleberry Lane, a privately owned and maintained road, and Colburn Culver Road, a Bonner County owned and maintained public right-of-way. Bonner County Road and Bridge did not comment as to the construction of Colburn Culver Road, and there has been no information provided to the construction and quality of Thimbleberry Road. So on October 17th of 2024, there was a unanimous recommendation for approval from the zoning commission. And on April 9th, the Board of County Commissioners decided to deny this project in a 2-1 vote. And that concludes my presentation. I can answer any questions if you have any for me.
I just would like to say one thing to the planning department. On your slide where you were talking about the Ag Forest 10 standards, it says within or adjacent to an ACI on the graph, but in its full language and context, it says maybe. Could we just ask you guys to put that on your slides and on our paperwork in the future, please? Because it makes a big difference. The way it reads in here, it says that it has to be within or adjacent to an ACI. And that's not the way our code's written. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the feedback.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Clarification. I don't have any questions at this time, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The applicant's representative like to present? You're welcome to use whichever one you'd prefer.
I got my chair
Okay.
here in case I need it. Anyway, Dan Provost, project representative for the landowners, Ledru. And thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Corn. I was going to tackle that one too, because it loses its fluxy once you take off that May. I know that was part of a previous decision, that was being used to say it doesn't meet that. And so we're back here again. We have some soils analysis and some thorough breakdowns of the property, the 20-acre piece itself. What we're looking at is rounded numbers, and some of that stuff was believed to be one thing, and it wasn't. So anyway, I'm going to start out here. I'm going to go ahead and read through my application for reconsideration that I turned in. Applicant Rich Ledru, through their representative, Provo Land Surveying, submits the request for reconsideration to the Bonner County Board of Commissioners. Decision to deny on the April 9th, 25 hearing. The official decision letter dated April 14th. The deadline for the request was April 28th. So we cleared that hurdle. This is a request for reconsideration. This request for reconsideration is based on the following deficiencies in the Bonner County Commissioner's determination to deny this file. Decision was arbitrary, capricious, and or abuse of discretion, not supported by substantial evidence on the record as a whole. We're going to jump into that. The arbitrary, capricious, and or abuse of discretion. Bonner County Planning Department, through a complete and thorough examination, found the zone change request to be free of conflict in every element of the comprehensive plan designations. And the county is very thorough about their job. They do go through and they make us all a packet staff report and hit every single one of those things. These findings were ignored by the Bonner County Commissioners Domke and Williams. I might change that word ignored to interpreted differently. These findings were upheld and agreed to by Commissioner Corn. The Bonner County Zoning Commission voted 4-0 unanimous in support of the proposal that it was in accord with the elements of the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan, Title 12 Revised Code, in accordance with the purpose of the Ag Forest zoning designation. So we had unanimous. So we had the county saying all the elements were met, no conflicts, and we had the zoning commission voted unanimous that it does meet the findings of the zone we're trying to bring into place here. These findings were ignored by the Bonner County Commissioners Domke and Williams, and again, I can change that ignored to interpreted differently. These findings, okay, we don't need to read that again. This These findings were upheld and agreed to by Commissioner Corn. The BOCC should be made aware that the continuity of the interpretation of Title 12 by the governing bodies is extremely important and necessary for the rights of all citizens, including the applicants of the various land use procedures. Based upon the findings of the Bonner County Planning Department and the Zoning Commission reviews and vote for approval, we now are faced with zero confidence at the outcome of the decision at the Bonner County Commissioner level. We go through a lot of this process. We do a lot of investigation, a lot of on the ground. We try to bring all the information here. Well done by the Planning Department, well done by the Zoning Commission, just to get here and have a 2-to-1 vote. It does not make sense. I feel there's consistencies in the translations, just like the verbiage that we were just talking about on the previous. What was that word? Consideration,
Characteristics.
characteristics. I believe that really needs to have a definite. If we're looking at how much of a percentage of the property we're looking at, how much of that, let's put a line on there, say, X amount to X amount, say 45% or more, 45% or less, something around there, 50% if it has to be, to bring that more into focus. If we can get to this level and there's 2 commissioners and we're arguing over the definition of something that should have something solid that we can look at and go, there's the line, there's that actual measurement, there's that actual measurement. We can make an agreeable decision to agree upon that. So we're not all sitting here wondering how is it going to go, because there's a inconsistency in definition. Back to the file. There were no public comments or concerns, which means no neighbors. Nobody said a thing. All 82 agencies, that's a long list, and a lot of them didn't have anything to do with what we're doing. 82 of them notified either no comment or no reply, except for I think there was a historical society, which really didn't have anything to do with what we're doing. They did not deny it. They didn't complain about it. Commissioners Domke and Williams not only disagreed with the thorough review and findings of the standards of review by Bonner County Planning and the Zoning Commission as given through the comp plan and Bonner County Code, but also the neighbors and the agency's reviews of this application. Nobody had anything to say. Usually you get somebody that doesn't like it and they live next door or down the road. We did get a late in the game person who said they didn't want, they're over on Hickey Road, which is a couple, 3 miles away. I don't know where on Hickey Road, but it was a very general statement, don't like zone changes, don't agree. So that's very general, doesn't have anything to do with their actual studies here and what we're looking at within the code to find out if it does or doesn't match our comprehensive plan. The following are the findings of the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan Analysis, along with reviews of over 80 agencies and public noticed residents. Property rights. We have the owner, the applicant, the staff, the agencies, public, and the Zoning Commission. There was found no conflict. Population. Again, the owner, the applicant, staff, agencies, public, Zoning Commission, no conflict. School facilities, no conflict. Economic development, no conflict. And these are the studies that have been put out there. Everybody got the application to live within a certain distance from our project. Natural resources, no conflict. Hazardous areas, no conflict. Public service, no conflict. Transportation, no conflict. Recreation, no conflict. Special areas or sites, no conflict. Housing, no conflict. Community design, no conflict. Agriculture, no conflict. The conclusion is the property does not lack any provision of the comprehensive plan by anyone or any agency except Commissioners Domke and Williams. So I'm going to revisit Bonner County Code 12322 in determining the best fit for the Ag Forest 10 or the Ag Forest 20. Ag Forest 10 and Ag Forest 20 both established to provide for agricultural and forestry pursuits. We have that in common. We're not changing outside of what the comp plan has already agreed for this to be, and this is still Ag Forest. It's still going to be Ag Forest. We're just looking at the difference between what fits better, the 10 or the 20. Both the AF10 and AF20 retain areas sized for efficient farming. There's a whole bunch of 10s on the other side of Culver and Kohler Road that have efficient farming, and they're 10s. Both AF10 and AF20 allow uses related to ag and compatible uses. Looking at that same code in B-1-A, AF20 is appropriate. In the ag forest, that feature prime ag soils, and again, there's that one of those words, feature. Okay, ag soils. Appropriate, it says appropriate, that feature. Appropriate doesn't mean shall or must, nor is a mandatory designation for AF20. So whether you have prime ag soils or not, it's just appropriate. It doesn't mean it must or shall. Also, the only prime soil, the Selly fine sandy loam of the 4 soils mapped within the subject parcel, was field tested. Also the only, not only the. So we went out and dug some holes. And of course, last meeting, we brought them in and laid them on the table here. Since we had an analysis, a soils analysis done on that, and I will bring those findings up. Okay, it was field tested, analyzed, and found to lack the required sand. Not just sand, but the required amount of sand to be considered the mission silt loam soils. Sorry, that was Selly fine sandy loam. It failed to meet that definition. However, this soil, we took a soil sample from both. We took a soil sample from the Selly fine sandy loam side, and we took a sample from the mission silt loam. The mission silt loam, which is to the south of our project, southerly end of our project, which is classified as farmland of statewide importance. Of course, it's if drained, so you have to drain it just to get to the statewide importance. But the statewide importance is not recognized as prime farmland soil by the comprehensive plan or the state of Idaho. So as soon as you have the farmland of statewide importance, whether drained or not, it still is not recognized as prime farmland. The staff report shows that as prime soils, but then later on the first paragraph it reads through and says the same thing, that it has not been recognized as prime farmland soil. We got to throw that out. The nearest of any other non-sandy loam types that are actually considered prime soils are to the south and to the north, 3,000 to 4,000 feet away. Also being 100 feet lower in elevation in a totally different environment. Common sense, logic, soil comparison, and testing removes the Selly fine sandy loam from the map and replaces it with the mission silt loam located on the property, which is of statewide importance, which is not considered by the comp plan nor the state as being prime soils. Going back to our soils test, the soil sample from the Selly, the mapped fine sandy loam and the mapped mission silt loam soils were identical. There was no change, there was no increase in sand, there was no, anyway, we'll get there. Both AF10 and AF20 are characterized by agricultural forestry uses. We get to the AF10 only, limited services. We do not have limited services. Characterized by steeper slopes steeper than 30%. I would say we're not characterized by it. And I will give you the actual numbers of what we're looking at here in a minute. Access absent or limited. We are not absent or limited. It's a good looking road. It is stable. It's been there. It's been used. It's wider than a lot of the gravel county roads. And it's fairly flat. Rolls through there until it gets to the back of the property and then continues on up the hill. The other last consideration of AF20 is or where large tract of land may be devoted to the ag forest production. So I'm going to read about that a little bit here. This description is vague, no direct definition. It does not declare what size large tracts are or how close or how far the subject parcel they must be. It's a debatable issue. And it's the single and only point in favor of the AF20 that is weak, completely outnumbered, as the comp plan and the code both favor the AF10 zone for the subject parcel. But if you think you have to bring in that vague large tracts area of, okay, so then what we need to do, which hasn't been mentioned, is only completely left out of the staff report, was that if you're going to use the size of parcels, and even for it to be considered to have value, it must be weighed heavily against the 6 adjoiners, not in the same area, but they adjoin the parcel sizes. You have to consider that. The existing AF10 zone, let me reread that. If this point is held to have value, it must be weighed heavily against the 6 adjoining parcels sizes and the existing AF10 zone adjoining, again, on the north, not those 1,200 feet away. However, let's look and see what we got for the 1,200 feet. Size of parcels within the 1,200 feet of the project, there are 4 10s. This is within the 20. There are 4 10s. And there are 4 5-acre adjoining the residential use. There's 1 80-acre, but that 80-acre is already in the AF10 zone to the north. Already, maybe 80 acres, but it's in the AF10 zone. They can split that up. That should not be restrictive, should not be counted as a large area for tracts using that kind of terminology. It's already AF10. We have 4 20s, 1 55, 1 30-acre, and 1 25-acre, all still within that 1,200 feet. So we're going to look at the size of the parcels within 600 feet. There are 2 10-acre parcels adjoining, 4 5 acres adjoining, 120, 130, and 180, and again the 80 is already AF10. Which they can do they go through the subdivision process and make some 10s in there. So we're going to move on to the AF10 only. Ag forests that do not feature prime ag soils do not feature prime ag. Again, we're looking at an arbitrary kind of what is the interpretation of featuring. I think that it's interesting that why would you throw out a prime agricultural soil? I mean, I don't think that's exactly what they mean. I think the intent was to say may not feature prime, or even if they do not feature prime. But to say if you don't feature prime soils, you can't do a 10. But I was just looking at the board earlier on the R5, R10 argument, and it said that the R10 can have prime soils, which is interesting. So that 10 can have prime. That makes sense that A of 10 can also have prime. So what they meant to say, my interpretation, because of the way it said, ag forests that may not feature prime ag soils, but where agricultural and forestry pursuits remain viable. It says does not feature, this partial does not feature. Okay, so let's go into that. What if it does? Well, I think we just determined that it doesn't. I'm going to get the soil samples out. We're going to look at that in a minute. So again, I'm going to just touch bases with that whole area of impact. And what it said was area may be within or adjacent to. No, it just says may be within. This item is not restrictive. So it shouldn't even be in the chart, other than maybe you wonder about that as you're splitting, changing zones. Information only. If it may be within, then why bring it up? Maybe out, anyway. Future question, I think it caused more questions than it fixed. The parcel has fire protection, access from roads. Okay, map soils within the subject property. We have the hallow xerox or something like that, and the other one anyway, not prime soils, 0.7 acres total. Ponderay rock outcrop, not prime soils, 8 acres. Selly fine sandy loam, not found on the site for our soil analysis. However, found soils in there matching the sample from the Mission Silt loam area, which is mostly silt, very little sand, hard to drain. Drainage is a problem. Mission Silt loam, number 4, farmland of statewide importance if drained, not recognized by the state, whether drained or not. And the reason they say drained is because there's a lot of wet in there, there's a lot of water in there, as well as the soils they were mapped out as being the Selly fine sandy loam. Also wet, it matches the silt loam by content and by the wetness and the need to drain it. Best case you got out there is several acres of farmland of statewide importance, not recognized by the state as prime. The subject parcel joins 2 existing 10 acres to the west. In the Ag Forest 10 acres, non-conforming, but they're still 10 acres each. They're still doing the Ag Forest use. It doesn't restrict your Ag Forest use by going from 10 or 20 to a 10. Adjoins 4 existing 5-acre residential parcels to the east. There's 5 of them. Sorry, 4 5-acre lots. The subject parcel adjoins an existing 80, that is AF10 to the north, already our target. We're not out in the middle of something trying to get something changed, out in the middle of a bunch of 20s or 60s or whatever you got. We are right up against our AF10 to the north, which can be subdivided into 10s, minimum, however, but 10s. Now, process can happen without public hearing or commissioner's review. So that's a done deal, at least at this time. This parcel is surrounded on 3 sides by a 10, 5, and target zone A of 10. South line is a private road easement that partitions the neighbor to the south and feeds 30 parcels further up. 15 of those 30 parcels are 5s and 10s. So we can't just block out and say 11 out of 19 parcels are big and leave all this information out. This is important information if we're looking at exactly what is going on within the location of our request. I know the board on another project that we had out in the Hope area, it was denied because of the use of a residential area adjoining and adjacent to, and everything out here was ignored. It was very focused on the area exactly where we wanted to do a project. Here, we need to do the same thing. We need to look at that, see what is exactly there, what's north of it, west of it, east of it, and south of it, and not go clear out to try to find a reason to say no when this thing fits the AF10 so much better than the AF20. This parcel is fractured as follows. Forest, 11.5 acres, most of which is rocky outcrop non-prime soils. Meadow, 4.3 acres non-prime soils. House and outbuildings area, 2 acres non-prime soils. Slope, 0.7 acres over 30%. 0.7 out of 20. Water, we have a 1/2 acre of water flow and retention areas. Some of it was in the trees. You can see where the flows are. I'm going to show a map that shows the wet areas pretty good. There's a rocky outcrop island in the middle, smack dab in the middle of this property that took up an entire acre that was completely missed by the aerial flyover back in 1982, 17,000 feet, black and white photo. Of course, they missed it. And they're missing the ability to go down and dig a hole like we did and go, that's what it is. These were all just approximations that they put out there in their USDA soils analysis book. So final comparisons, we're going to look at AF20 prime soils. No, there isn't. The ones that are considered prime soils are of statewide importance, which are then not considered as prime soils by the state and the comp plan. So we can throw that out. We examined and tested the soils and maps with adjoining mission loam soil. Again, all areas of the 1982 soils map are approximate and inferred AF20 characterized by ag forest uses. Both 20 and 10 are that same. They both meet that. Characterized by 30% or greater slope. Less than 0.5% is slope. Access absent or limited, we're getting to 20. No, we're not. It's not absent and it's not limited by any means. Large tracts may be devoted to ag forest, 10 or 20, I'm sorry, I'm in the 20. It's not decisive or required, it says may. Ag forest 10. Comp plan designation, yes, ag forest. Do not feature prime ag soils, but ag forest pursuits remain viable, yes. May be within or adjacent to ACI, not required, because it may be within. They're not limiting, they're adding more space. They say you can do that too. Doesn't take away from the 10 that exist that's not in the ACI. Afforded fire protection, yes. Access to standard roads and other services, which is most services. Phone and gas and power and fire and emergency services. It's already there. So we've got nothing going for the AF10. We've got everything going for the AF20. So based upon the above findings, the applicant requests a reconsideration of the Commissioner decision to deny the file, CC 1124. So, I got a couple of maps here. One, I just printed out a proximity off the GIS site and penciled in all of the 20s, 10s and 5s within the area of our project. A little easier to see up on the board, but so we've got a project is here. We've got 5, 5, 5, 5. We got 3 10s down here. We've got 2 10s right next door. This is already AF10. So we're boxed in on 3 sides and trimmed by the road on the south side. We've got 10s below these guys, 10, 10, 10, and we got everything on the other side of over on our 10s, even though this is still ag Ag Forest 10. I went through a previous zone change to the north up here, and we brought up why is, because the soil here is the same as it is here. They used a section line, a county road line, to make a determination as to what should be 10 and what should be 20. They didn't use the considerations within the comp plan to make those decisions. They said, we're gonna do 20 on this side, and we're gonna do 10s on this side. All ag forest. I got one. This was a little easier for me to go into Google Earth and grab an aerial photo from Google Earth. Mid-July. By mid-July, we're drying out pretty good, but this allows you to see that we are wet up behind the house. We've got the house up here. We're wet to the north end and we're wet to the south end, and the project where the statewide important soils continues, it comes up into here, continues to the south. That shows you that those are basically the same type of soils retaining the water. The claimed prime soils says well drained. This is not well drained. So we had geotech in a government way do a site analysis, or a soils analysis, I should say. I can cut short of the, you go right to their conclusion. So we have, based on the laboratory testing, both samples classify as silt with sand. So that is a laboratory testing. There's silt and there's sand. So silt with sand, not sand with silt, not sandy silt. It is silt that has some sand in it. Extremely fine particles, particulates. The second is based on using the particle size, like I was just talking about, the parcel size analysis in conjunction with the USDA soil texture triangle, and that's what the county uses to determine what we're looking at as far as dirt. Both samples classify as silt loam. Means there's not enough sand, have to be over 50% sand to be considered the other well drained. So we've got an analysis here that says we're classifying it as silt loam, not the sandy silt. So okay, so now we're looking back at the silt loam, poorly drained. It matches exactly what the mapped soils analysis charts and maps show us to the south. So part of our project is this per the map. What we're finding, they match. It's the same soil south inside of that analysis and the same soils up into our project. They're calling something else. It's obviously been misdiagnosed back in 1982, and there's a whole bunch of it. If you go in and start dialing in and seeing what they call this and what they call that, obvious, especially along the river. They have parts that go over the river and say prime farmland if drained. Well, nobody's going to drain the river, for crying out loud. Anyway, I don't need to go deep into that, but the logic here is they both are the same and they both meet the statewide importance to the south in testing and results, which are not recognized by the county, the state, as being prime farmland. So I'm going to be done with this, but the landowner's not here, but they're going to come in on Zoom and have a say also. So if there's any questions I can answer now, and maybe answer a few more after they speak.
Any questions, Commissioner?
I don't have any questions.
I also do not have any questions. Thank you, Mr. Provost.
The applicant has their hand up.
Okay, please allow the applicant to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Great, thank you so much. I apologize in advance if I start talking. I'm fighting a cold outside now, but my name is Nikki LaBrue.
I'm sorry, could you please pause? It's very difficult to understand you. Could you maybe adjust your position to the microphone?
Is that better?
Much better, thank you.
I would just like to make a statement for the record regarding our request on behalf of my husband, Rich LaDrew, myself, Nikki LaDrew, our 4 children, and our family. So thank you, commissioners, for your time and consideration today. Over the last 10 months, yes, it has been 10 months, we have provided more than adequate evidence that our property clearly meets the definitions for 10-acre ag forest requirements for Bonner County and have presented those in several previous meetings since back before October of 2024. Our family's goal is to divide the land into 2 10-acre parcels so that our children can help us work the land and maintain the land and live on the land with us as they grow and mature. 20 acres is a lot of land to manage and maintain for just 2 people. When we bought the land, we were intentional and went through the process of having a forester come and show us the entire property from corner to corner and create a forestry plan, which we have been actively working on since we have owned the property for the last almost 4 years. We could actually log the entire property and make a ton of money as it is full of mature cedars. But we have not done that, nor do we plan to. We have had a farmer come and work the hayfields in order to beautify the land and start the regenerative process for the soil, as it is not good soil, as clearly the findings have shown you. We have chosen to steward the land that God has given us so that we can preserve it and have it flourish. We love our sorry, I'm getting emotional. This has been a long process. We love our property, and our 4 children love the property and want to live on it and help us. We also have 2 sets of aging parents who are veterans who will be living on the property with us. Our vision when we purchased this land was to preserve it and to have it be a legacy for our family, our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren to come. My parents have been in North Idaho for over 20 years, and we have roots here. We want to continue the tradition of farming, growing our own food, chickens, cows, etc. And our kids want to do it with us. This is how you preserve the farms and the farmland. You say you want to preserve the farmland in Bonner County, but generations of families need to be able to live on the land in order to do this. Teach the kids the skills and how to preserve the land, and then they will want to teach their children to do the same. This is generational. Grandparents, parents, and their children working together on the land to preserve it. Not by making up restrictions and subjectively making maps, certain colors, without really looking at the surrounding area and using decades-old data and aerial photographs that don't show anything. We believe that we are the ideal people who you actually want to be on this land to maintain it and preserve it. We love Selly Valley. We love our neighbors. We love the community we have here. We actually looked for properties for over 2 years to find the perfect land in Selly Valley. We just want to be treated fairly. We feel like we've been asked to be jumping through hoops and for an objective look at our request based on the county zoning requirements and not personal opinions. We are doing and wanting to do what the true spirit of the land preservation is actually all about. There are many who are not doing this. We have done more work on this request than the county has. We've spent over $12,000 to get to this point after 10 months of land surveying, filing fees, application fees, refiling fees, reapplication fees, legal representation to protect our rights as tax-paying citizens excavation costs, soil testing, and the list goes on. And that doesn't even include the countless hours we've spent working on this, submitting information, providing details that are still not accurate in your reports. We don't have 19 acres of timber exemption on our taxes. We have 12.6, which has already been submitted. We don't have an ag exemption. We hay those fields, and we don't get an ag exemption for that. All of that's inaccurate in the staff report. This shouldn't be this difficult. The staff report you based your previous decision on is unfortunately not accurate regarding the services we have, the road access, the soils on our land, as well as the data on surrounding parcels. All of these details are what makes our property a 10 ag forest. We're asking you to reconsider our request based on several pretty important key factors, which I will reiterate. First, we are in service areas. In fact, we have access to all services and even natural gas through a vista to our house, which is not common in Selly Valley. We have underground power through Northern Lights and are minutes from the Northside Fire Station, not the Sagal District per what's in the staff report. This checks the box for Ag Forest 10, not 20, which is specifically states, quote, has limited services. Secondly, we also are located off a major county road. Colburn Culver is probably the largest county road in Selly Valley, and we're less than a half a mile walk from driveway to the road. This also checks the box for Ag 10 forest. Thirdly, we also do not have prime soils, which is a key factor in what makes it a 20. We don't even have prime soils. Per Dan's presentation of soil testing and area expertise as a surveyor in this area for decades. And lastly, we are surrounded by tons of 10s and 5s, and I mean tons of 10s. We back up to an 80-acre parcel, which is also backed up to a 314-acre parcel, that are all actually 10 ag forests. That is a super important detail that's not called out in the staff report, because our north border backs up to 39 10s. We have 4 5s to our east border. We have another 2 10s to our west border and 1 30 to our south. And that doesn't include the huge pile of 10s that are ag forest 10s bordering Colburn Culver, which is literally where our mailbox is, less than half a mile away, and is basically 3 property lines from our house. In our little square section of the zoning map, there are literally 25 properties that are 10s or less. We are not asking to not be an ag forest. We want to keep the ag forest zoning. We're just simply asking to have 2 10s for a family. I would like to remind you of the updated staff report for this reconsideration filed on July 30th of 2025. Starting on page 5, the agency review section, all major agencies either had no comment or stated that there were no issues with this zone change. Starting on page 7 of that report, the comprehensive plan analysis section, every single section, property rights, population, school facilities and transportation, economic development, land use and natural resources, hazardous areas, public services, facilities and utilities, transportation, recreation, special areas or sites, housing, community design, and agriculture all ended with a similar staff statement of, quote, this proposal does not appear to conflict with the policies of this component, period, end quote. And lastly, on October 17th, 2024, that's right, October, we've been dealing with this since October, the Zoning Commission recommended and voted unanimously 4-0 to approve this request. It is evident that we meet all of the 10 ag forest requirements, and we request that you do what is proper and follow the code and the law laid out by the county for Bonner County and approve our requests today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does that conclude presentations by the applicant?
I would like to make a statement real quick to Mrs. LeDrew. On behalf of Bonner County, I'd like to apologize for the burden that we seem to have created. I just feel like I need to go on record saying that. It should not take this long for something as simple as this. I'm sorry, but.
I'm going to disagree with you, Commissioner. We can talk more about that. So does the applicant have any additional presentation at this time?
So we actually went through the whole list of the comp plan designations for the AF10, but I did want to look at, just highlight what we have here on the comprehensive plan analysis for property rights. Number 3, the property rights of the applicant, adjoining and nearby landowners, future generations should be considered, as well as the short-term and long-term consequences of the decision. But what we're looking at here, property rights of the applicant, the adjoining and nearby landowners. Again, what we have right there, we've gone over it. We've got all these like already 10s and nearby to the north end already AF20. I think it makes absolute and total sense to do the AF10. It meets all the requirements. You have to really stretch out to try to get it to say, no, it doesn't meet that when it meets every single one of them. Any questions?
No thanks.
Okay, so at this time, is the applicant presentation complete?
Yes.
Okay. Do we, staff, could you please show who's online?
Leslie, can you pull over the list? Does that help?
Do we have any public who would like to comment in support of the applicant? Do we have any neutral public comment? And then do we have any opposing public comment? Mr. Bowman?
Okay, you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, Dave Bowman for the record. So a couple of things in listening to the applicant's presentation. There is no right to rezone your property. You have the right to ask. And the properties to the north, for those of us who may be familiar or not, used to be all 20s, and there were 714 acres that got rezoned to 10s over huge community objection, and it went to court, and the attorney representing the appellants made a technical error, and so they got their way, and they ended up with 10s. The fact that there are other 10s around all over the county, these are called non-conforming lots, and it's an absolute. We've been through this in the comprehensive plan. We've been through it in zoning. There are lots all over the county that are smaller than what their zoning is, that were formed before the 2008 zoning came in, and they are referred to as non-conforming. And they are a legit thing. It doesn't mean that it does not establish any right or reason for properties that are near them to also be rezoned. And I want to go into, so in the application, the applicant said there's not enough prime ag soils to limit this area to large scale farming. But I want to point out that the AF20 zone doesn't limit the use of farming at all, and certainly not large-scale farming. There's people who live on 20-acre or in the 20-acre zones all over the county that aren't farming. They live there, and residential use is allowed. So 12323 states AF20 is appropriate where prime ag soils are featured. And again, I know that people don't like to hear this and go back to the hearing that happened just before this, but it doesn't really matter what anyone likes. The 12800, Title 12, Chapter 8, terms not defined within Title 11 of this code or this title shall, not if you like it, shall have the meaning customarily assigned to them as defined in the Merriam-Webster Collegiate Dictionary 11th edition. You don't get to argue that. That's the law. So AF20 is appropriate where prime ag soils are featured. And that edition of Merriam-Webster's Collegiate defines featured as to have as a characteristic. Okay, and the code says AF20 in areas that are characterized by slopes steeper than 30%. And if you look at the map, they're pretty prominent. And we say again, Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary, 11th edition, says characterize is to describe a character or quality of, or to be a characteristic of. And that's the law, folks. And it just got, I got the runaround in the last hearing saying that I'm just kind of making things up, but I'm not making anything up. That's the law, and gotta follow it. So I think, let me see if I got anything else here. I think that'll do it. I just encourage you to follow the law to the letter. That's what it's for. Zoning code is law. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any other in opposition? Right. So, Mrs. LeDrew, just so you know, we're doing public comment in opposition right now. I see your hand raised. You will have a rebuttal opportunity in the near future. So, at this point, any discussion amongst the commissioners? Commissioner Corn, I do feel the need to say that it's not appropriate, in my opinion, for you to speak on behalf of the board without the consent of the board.
That's fine, that's your opinion.
Yeah. We can disagree, sir, but I appreciate the frustration and the long history associated with this by the applicant. But at the same time, it's necessary for me to state the fact that I believe I've demonstrated I seek to act consistently and based on facts and data whenever we can do so. Sometimes some things, unfortunately, in our code require interpretation at this time. In any case, I make no apology for the fact that I do my best to make clear and well established and well described decisions.
So I would like to say, Commissioner Domke, that I am in here the last 6 or 7 months. I just got finished running a campaign to run for this office. And during that time I was running for their campaign, I told the people repeatedly that I would use my Christian beliefs and I would use the Constitution to help me make my decisions and also use the law to help make my decisions. And in my opinion, I think we should be working for the people that we represent to try and find ways to make things work for them instead of trying to find ways for it not to work for them. And that's what I meant by when I stated that I apologize that it takes so long to do something like this for things that seem to be fairly cut and dry. Now, we can sit here and we can argue about terminology and everything else. The inaccuracies stated by one of the citizens that spoke earlier, that upsets me, but the description, there's a lot of description left up to the board, and I think we would both agree on that. And that is where we should be using our Christian values, our constitutional values to help make those decisions when it is not black and white on the law. If it was black and white on the law, it would be simple. Your job would be easy, my job would be easy. But it is not black and white. So what do we do and what do we base our opinions on when things are not black and white?
Right.
And that's where I fall back. And so I don't think it's government's job, and I don't see any words where it is written that it is government's job when it's not black and white to try and find reasons not to be in favor of an applicant, especially, and this is, I'm not talking the law right now, especially when it deals with families and their parents or their children. And we all know the situation, the crisis that we are in today as a county, that our kids are having to move out of state because they can't afford to live here. But yet someone has an opportunity, and it seems like we find, or we try and find reasons to not allow that to happen for them. And it's very upsetting to me, and I'm sorry that I'm having to say this, but it is very aggravating for me, and I got to get it off my chest because all it does is create a headache for myself.
That's fine, Commissioner. I want to clearly state, it's not my position, and I don't think it's appropriate to ever attempt to find a way to approve or deny an application. My intent has always been, and will continue to be, to seek to apply the law equally based on as many facts as I can derive. I don't come into any of these hearings seeking to approve or deny. I seek to find the truth and apply the law as consistently as I can. And we do have challenges. I've acknowledged that. We've both acknowledged that. And I understand we interpret it differently at times. And I feel for the situations that a lot of the families are in that are shared by a lot of us, but I can't allow my emotions to get in the way of making a clear and consistent decision. And I'm not going to play to emotions to do it. So,
And to be clear on that, I'm not playing to emotions. I'm playing to my Christian values and my constitutional values.
which means we have to follow the law.
And when the law is not clear, right, I think we would both agree that when we're talking about characteristics of 30% or more slopes, what does that mean to you by the law? That doesn't mean anything to me by law because it hasn't been spelled out in our code. So
we do have
therefore,
definitions to use.
I have to fall back on.
Okay, so we've both stated our positions. I think it's important that we move on to the applicant's rebuttal, and then from there we can go into our deliberation. Okay, so Mr. Provo, I'm going to start with the landowner and then give you time as well. So Mrs. LeDrew, if you would like to make a rebuttal statement, you are now welcome to do so.
Yes, thank you. First, I want to thank you, Commissioner Korn. I appreciate your apology, and I thank you for your support over the last 10 months in these different hearings that we've had. Back to quickly this Mr. Bowman gentleman. Is he an employee of the county?
No, could you please direct your comments to the board and not about the public? If
Well,
you'd like
my rebuttal
to
is,
address information, please do that, but not the person.
well, it seems like he was calling in to give you guys the law. And that's why I'm asking if he's part of the county or if he's an employee, because you shouldn't be making decisions based on his comments of the law. I feels like he's a plant because he's been calling into all the hearings doing the same thing. So my rebuttal is, I would like for the county attorney to come back into the room so that he can hear this as well. And, you know, you asked for soil samples because the one thing, the feature, the characteristic, or whatever you guys want to call it, that differs our property between a 20 and a 10 are the prime soils. And you asked for those results, and Dan brought them to you, and it shows that we don't have prime soils. So it's very black and white. It's not consistent with what you've asked us to do. It's black and white. We don't have prime soils. So that takes us out of 20 automatically. So that's my rebuttal, and Dan can further that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Provo?
So I definitely agree. I listened to the rebuttal by Mr. Bowman, and so I'm talking about that. He went right back to prime soils again after we just proved it by soil samples and also a vision of the July wetness out there, that they are the same type of soils, the loam, silt loam. They are not as mapped. So somehow we got to wrap our head around this, the soil samples and the aerial photos in the middle of summer. The soils I brought in and put on the table, the soils that I did my own test on before I took it to find out what it did. I did hours on trying to figure out how do you analyze soils? How did they analyze soils back in 1982? They did it by inference. They did a few samples around the county to find out what kind of soils does our county have. Most of it is inferred by how much higher. They decided that little area in there must have sand because it's coming off the hill, the Rocky. So the idea is, well, this is how it works through years and years of rain and erosion and everything else. That area is going to have, it's going to have sand in it. Well, they missed it. They went to the bottom and said, here's your wet, non-sandy soils. They did that. I brought that picture in right off of the book of soil studies, the USDA Soils Agricultural. At 17,000 feet, you get a kind of a, with no color. You don't have anything to test your results on. And that's what the county's using. But when we bring in dirt and say, no, they're wrong, it shouldn't be that hard to go, oh yeah, they are wrong, because you know how they decided to do the study in the first place. Approximate, inferred, go dig a hole. Nobody's required to go dig a hole except for septic, but we wanted to show that they were incorrect. I brought in an area up here behind to the east. I brought in some maps that they showed. We looked at a GIS photo from 3 years later. It had some color to it, so yeah, that's helpful. You got some color. But it's still not getting on the ground and digging the holes and seeing what's going on around the county. They have these lines that are so articulate, you know, and they cannot be that accurate, absolutely not, from 17,000 feet above the ground on a black and white photo without the tools we have today. They didn't have LiDAR. They had to decide the differences in elevation out there by looking at a little stereoscope thing on the desk. We show there is no prime soils. There's prime soil of statewide importance, which has said that the Idaho has not agreed with that, and neither does the county comp plan. That goes. I can't think of anything else other than, you know, he says, well, that one, you know, all that acreage, 700 and some acres to the north shouldn't be counted because it used to be 20s. Before that, it was 10s. The county came through in 08 and went whoosh, 20s, without asking the man, do you want us to do this? And they drew that line. At that time, they drew it right down Culver and Culver Road, which has nothing to do with soil types or soils analysis or anything else. It's just really straight place, and we like that, and that's the way we're going to do it. We're here doing soil analysis, and they're saying, no, we trump that because there's a road. And we discussed that when we went through that 700 acres of rezone. That man bought his acreage, the majority of it. He bought that when it was 10-acre minimums. He just wanted it back. Nobody did a zone change for him. They didn't post it at the end of the roads like they do breakup limits. I mean, how convenient would that be? They post it in Daily Bee. Does everybody in the county buy the Daily Bee and read through the, you know? It's easy for a man who's working on a farm, raising alpacas, and working sales on his products, never home, but that's a whole nother story. I'm saying it was validity to changing that back to the 10s before they were 20s. Somebody decided that you couldn't do farming. I read through the processes and so forth that took place over about 3 years, read the processes, and they went from 10s to 20s because somebody said you can't have a farm on it. How many farms are there out there? We brought in a list of small farms. You can do a farm on 4 acres. That's what the Berry farm out there on Shingle Mill Road. He was here at the meeting, or not this one, but he was there, and he says, hey, you know, my berry farm's like 3.5 acres. I don't need 220 acres or bigger to do what I'm doing. That allows for small families to have small farms that they're either going to support themselves, feed themselves, or have a market. So there's no difference between a 10 and a 20. They're both ag forest uses. We look at the chart. There's nothing left that says a 20 works better than two 10s. And if it's possible, if we're closing down what I have to say and being able to at least have a little conversation about it, if you feel that there's anything on there that we're missing that keeps this from being a 10, I'd like to hear it so we can have a conversation rather than just shutting us off and then we're done and we're out. And all these, months and months and all this money has gone for nothing when we have demonstrated that a 10 is better at this particular spot. And these are the reasons why they check all the way down through the 10s. In the 20s, the only thing they have in common, they agree on, is they're both ag forest uses. Okay, there's no reason to change it. It's already comp planned, ag forest 10s and ag forest 20s. So we're not changing the comp plan. We're not trying to change the use. We're just taking what's reasonable. What's right next to us on the left, maybe they did get in there and get grandfathered, and the ones on the right, maybe they did get in there and get grandfathered, and that's not the way it is today. But the Ag Forest 10 right to the north is the way it is today, regardless of what happened in the past that Bowman's trying to bring up and say, we can't do that, but we can do this. You can't look at that, but you can look at this. I know the guy's job is to be here at all these meetings and say no.
Please focus
Sorry.
your comments to the board.
So it's not just me, it's not just the landowners, but it's the planning department and it's the planning or the zoning commission who have all decided, and Commissioner Ford here, who sees this as an absolute slam dunk to be AF10. There's no reason to say, no, it only works on 20s because the neighbors down here the other way have big land. Well, I don't know how many other ways to look at that. If it meets a check on every single AF10 requirement, and it does. AF20 does not. It's not remote, doesn't lack in services, doesn't lack in access. There may be a little bit of a slope up the north end, but so if there's a small ditch and it shows up right in the middle of the property, is that where we're going? Is that, if it's within 0.5% of, that means we can only do the valleys, no more slope stuff, no more drainage ditches, no more creeks. If you got a creek setback and you can't build on that anyway, what effect does that have on development? I don't see that either. I see slopes going down into a creek. You're higher on a hill and your creeks are a little deeper just because the slope goes down. It is not something to just go, oh, look, there's some slope, and say it doesn't match with what we're calling out. Anyway, trying not to ramble, but if there's anything that you can share with me that you think that we're not fulfilling our application or the information, I would love to answer that right now before I sit down and shut up.
I don't have any questions for you, Mr. Provost.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so we've closed the rebuttal. We're on to deliberation by the commissioners. If you don't mind, Commissioner Corr, I'd like to try to summarize.
Sure.
So a lot of things have been discussed, understandably. In my opinion, based on the information that's been brought forward, the critical factor in this decision is whether or not prime agricultural soils are characteristic of the property. The initial hearing considered that with the other factors, and we were, as code indicates, relying on the map, which is why I had the opinion I did at that time. I stand behind that. At that time, based on the information we had, we were then asked by the applicant if they could bring soil samples because they believed the map was inaccurate. We agreed. Based on that last hearing, I was not willing to accept that because those samples, the analysis of those samples provided Mr. Provost were not a professional analysis, number one. And number two, they told us what they didn't contain, They didn't tell us what soils they were. And so our code tells us that we need to determine whether or not they're prime agricultural soils. Not that they are not a particular prime agricultural soil of the list, but that whether or not they are a prime agricultural soil of any type. So that was the reason that we then had to look at other factors, because in my opinion, we still had to consider it a prime agricultural soil at that time because I didn't have data to prove otherwise. So the only data I had was the map that said it was. But now you've gone and you've gotten a professional lab analysis of the soil samples. And that lab analysis shows me that not what the soil is not, but that the soil is consistent with the other designation to the south, which is the statewide importance if drained, but not a prime agricultural soil. So now I believe what we have before us is the new data that actually substantiates what kind of soil we have, which would be new and better information than what the map provides. And so based on that, I believe that we now have pertinent data to indicate that what was classified to be approximately 50% of the property as prime agricultural soil is in fact instead soil of statewide importance if drained, which is not classified as a prime agricultural soil. So when I look at the difference in the criteria of our code between AF20 and AF10, if it has prime agricultural soil, then we have to continue down the list and figure out whether we can check the other boxes to make it AF20. If it does not, then it can't meet the criteria of AF20. If it does not have the prime agricultural soil, then it can meet the criteria of agricultural and forest 10, if it can meet the other items. So as I look at that, we know we have the AF comp plan designation. I now believe that we have non-prime agricultural soils on the parcel. It may be within or adjacent to an ACI, that maybe means it's not a critical decision-making factor. Afforded fire protection services, which we have information that it is, and access to standard roads and other services, which I believe it does. So the linchpin piece for me for this has been the soils. And in my opinion, for the first time, we have relevant data to make a decision other than what the soils maps indicate. So based on that, I am personally prepared to walk down through the process of coming to a final conclusion. If you're in agreement, I believe we have enough information to do that at this point based on staff report and based on the new information with the soils analysis.
Okay.
So if we go to the decision-making worksheet, the first item we have is Idaho Code 67-6511, which is the question as to whether or not, through our analysis, we believe the proposed changes are in accordance with the comprehensive plan. And I believe that yes, based on the analysis indicated in the staff report, that I agree with that analysis and that we are in conformance with the comprehensive plan.
I'd agree.
Our next item is Bonner County Revised Code 12-215. Whether or not the application and the documentation provided by the applicant sufficiently meets the applicant contents criteria. I do believe, based on reviewing the application as well as staff's evaluation, which I accept, that we had a complete application. And then in this case, there was a request made by the applicant to challenge the data from the soils map by providing soil samples, which ultimately now has resulted in soil lab testing by a qualified engineer, which now has indicated additional information to be submitted with the application. So my answer is yes, that we have a complete application.
I'd agree.
Bonner County Revised Code 12-216. whether or not there is adequate evidence that the proposal is not in conflict with the policies of the comprehensive plan as found in the adopt and implementation component. Again, the intended land use is agriculture and forestry. It's a question of the size of the zoning designation. Therefore, I believe that it's in conformance with the implementation component based on what the staff report has presented and all the evidence that we've reviewed.
I'd agree.
Bonner County Revised Code 12-263 reconsideration, whether the request for reconsideration requirements have been met. I believe they have. We've listened to the reconsideration request, and we have gone through and allowed the reconsideration process to take place, which is culminating in today's hearing. So I believe that we have met those requirements.
I'd agree.
Bonner County Revised Code 12-216 and 12-322B1. So first, the evaluation of zone change requests. The zone change proposals request shall be evaluated against Chapter 12, Subchapter 3.2, or as hereinafter amended. The Agriculture and Forestry District, whether the parcel in question meets the requirements of the Agricultural Forestry 20 zoning district. It is my opinion that it does not meet the Agricultural Forestry 20 zoning district because of the fact that we now have new evidence indicating that the soils in question are not prime agricultural soils. And that criteria has to be met to qualify for AF20. And so by not being able to qualify for the prime agricultural soils, none of the other factors matter because you have to meet all of the qualifications.
I'd agree.
And then finally, Bonner County Revised Code 12-322B2, whether the parcel in question meets the requirements for the Agricultural Forestry 10 zoning district. I'd like to go through those together. So to meet the AF10 designation, AF10 in areas designated as ag forest land in the comprehensive plan, which it does, that do not feature prime agricultural soils, which we have determined it does not feature, but where agricultural and forestry pursuits remain viable, which I believe based on all of the documentation and testimony indicates that in fact those are viable pursuits on that parcel. These areas may be within or adjacent to areas of city impact. The may means it's not required. The adjacency, it's not within, and defining adjacent is pretty far away, but it only says may, it's not a requirement, so therefore I believe we're in compliance. Or where lands are afforded fire protection, access to standard roads and other services. And we have documentation of road access and fire protection and other services being available, which I accept from the staff report and the documentation presented. So based on those factors, it is my opinion that yes, we do meet the requirements of Bonner County Revised Code 12-322B2 to indicate that it is appropriate for this to be AF10 zoning.
I'd agree.
Okay, and then I don't know that it's necessary to go into detail of aspects of the reconsideration letter that I disagree with, since we've come to a conclusion about the decision with regard to the request to change to Ag Forest 10 zoning. So I don't think, unless staff tells me it's pertinent to the record, I don't feel the need to.
So if there's any contested facts regarding the criteria that you evaluate, so just that list, either by the applicants or by an opposing party or public testimony, that's where we need to evaluate that consideration and deem, yay or nay, and what evidence and how that is or is not supported. So,
Yeah, so the aspects of the reconsideration letter that I disagree with are more to do with the statements associated with arbitrary, capricious, and abuse of discretion. But I don't think that's pertinent to the ultimate decision, so I don't think it's necessary to go into a rebuttal of that. Commissioner Corn, anything you'd like to add before moving forward with a motion?
No, not this time.
Would you like to make a motion, or would you like me to step down and make a motion?
I'll let you make the motion.
So stepping down from the chair, going to make a motion to reverse. I move to reverse the board's original decision and approve this file, project ZC0011-24, requesting a zone change from the agricultural forest 20 to agricultural forestry 10, to the Board of County Commissioners, finding that it is not in conflict with the policies of the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan, and Bonner County Revised Code as enumerated in the following conclusions of law. Conclusion 1, this proposal is not in conflict with the policies of the Bonner County Comprehensive Plan. Conclusion 2, this proposal was reviewed for compliance with Title 12 Bonner County Revised Code and was found to be in compliance. Conclusion 3, the proposal is in accord with the purpose of the Agricultural Forestry 10 zoning district provided at Chapter 3, Title 12 Bonner County Revised Code. This decision is based upon the evidence submitted up to the time the staff report was prepared and testimony received at this hearing. I further move to adopt the reasoned statement as discussed in deliberation at this hearing and the analysis as set forth in the staff report or as amended during this hearing, and direct planning staff to draft the reasoned statement to reflect this motion as set forth in Idaho Code Section 67-6535, have the chair sign and transmit to all interested parties. This action does not result in the taking of private property.
I'll second that.
Okay.
I do have a quick discussion thing.
Yes, sir.
This was a reconsideration hearing. So wouldn't the wording be different that we're reversing the original decision instead of this wording just sounds like this is the first time it's gone through.
It says that we reversed the original decision.
Did you read that? Reversed?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't catch that. I thought you were reading it.
No,
Here.
I'm sorry. If you want to go, wait a minute.
Because you read all of this.
No, you're, I think you're looking at the original,
Okay.
not the current.
I just wanted to be clear on
I
that.
think we have, yeah,
Perfect.
I think that's the historic information, not the current.
Which was, yes,
Yeah.
all the same.
So this is
Okay.
the one, this is the motion I just made. If you want to read it, and confirm that you still agree.
Yep, I agree. Thank you, Alex.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further deliberation?
Nope.
Just a moment. Are we, let's see if I missed something.
You vote on that motion, then you make a second motion.
We'll have the second motion for the map.
Yeah, so you vote on this motion, then you make a
Okay.
second motion for the map ordinance change.
All right. Then, Elisa, can we please have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Warren?
Yes?
Commissioner Duffy?
Yes. We then need to have another motion to address the map change. So I'll step down again.
Thank you.
I move to approve an ordinance of Bonner County, Idaho, the number to be assigned, setting its authority and providing for the amendment of the official zoning map of Bonner County by the classification of lands located in Section 26, Township 58 North, Range 1 West, Boise Meridian, Bonner County, Idaho, to Agricultural Forestry 10 and providing for an effective date.
I'll second that.
Any deliberation, sir?
I don't.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Thorne?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes. And unless staff is aware of anything we've missed, I will adjourn this meeting. Okay. Anything else, Commissioner?
At 4:27.
That it is 4:27 and this